This is the story of art. Once upon a time, 3 wise researchers fell to earth in search of a PLE. They wondered if they would ever have a unique experience, or if together they would discover a universal PLE. They stopped in at the Great Western Hotel in Rockhampton, knowing that in order to appreciate the profound, one must first satisfy the mundane. They ate and drank, and they had a little wager on the rodeo, and then they were able to wrestle with all things epistemological. Then they drove through the long, dark nights, many, many nights, without so much as a dawn or a dusk, and they surrendered to the night, and they began to see things. They saw themselves when they were young, about 10 million or so years ago. They saw their whole self, and remembered the moment of awareness. They remembered they had been complete in their awareness for a time, until it was time to grow. Then it's always difficult. After they grew, they remembered a different kind of knowing. They recalled an intense intuition that was so accurate, more than anything has been so since. They just knew, and they were right, and not a minute did they doubt this magical consciousness until the gods came and made things more understandable. There were many gods. Some of them were useful and others would make trouble. But they set down patterns of behaviour that began to look familiar and began to be known. The mythical consciousnesses of the wise researchers recognised the archetypes. And one of them said, the weird one, said faintly, as though with a voice from the distant magical consciousness, "One day a man called Jean will tell our story to the world." Many nights after that came the enlightenment. Finally daylight, and it showed it all so clearly in black and white. The researchers were passing through the modern world of science and quantitative methodology. They could move quickly here, with certainty. They were highly regarded by the modern society, for they were scientific researchers. The crowd circled them and frightened them so much with their conviction that they dared not acknowledge the voices of magical and mythical pasts in their heads. But the voices grew louder and became angry because they were not being heard. Magic and myth had a role to play in consciousness, but modern society drowned them out with the incessant noise of the Industrial Revolution. Only at night could the knowledge from myth and magic speak to the researchers. And when they woke, affected and sweating, they would say, "Fear not, it's just a dream." Then quite unexpectedly the 3 wise researchers saw again the little boat that had brought them down to earth. And there it sat on the water, where the sky above and the sea below had become one. But this boat had flourished and transformed into a handsome vessel with sails by which to propel itself when there was no one to row it. What had started out as a dependent vessel had developed freedom and spiritual independence, even empathy, which had been unknown to the researchers until now. And this boat was equipped with more than engineering genius. It had, too, the stories of Ulysses in the winds of its sails, and the very best fortune of second sight in the green, lucid eyes of the captain's cat. And there were many territories to now explore from here onwards. Then one night, back at the Rockhampton Hotel, they reflected on their journeys. "Did we ever find those PLEs that we set out for originally?" asked the task-oriented one, named Damien. "Well," said Cole, who was the big picture thinker of the group, You redesigned the engine when we broke down and called the engine room your PLE. Yes, cried Damien. And you tied all the bits of the boat together in the storm to stop them flying into the cyclone. And you said that your PLE was a process of improvisation. Did I? Said Cole. And what did you do, David? I stared into the eyes of the cat and saw the future. That's why we had the rope and the engine oil. It's not all three-dimensional, you know. And so they did. And each PLE was of equal value.
This story is not based on any person living or dead or working at CDU, and any similarity is strictly coincidental.